coming to Decolonise Fest. It's the first day of the third annual event. And it's all about kind of celebrating the work of punks of colour, people that have come before us, people are here now, people are going to be here in the future. So this panel is about Poly Styrene, and it's going to be about her legacy and kind of talking about everything that she's done, and also talking about kind of the things that both Celeste and Paul are doing to archive her work. So I guess we could just start by kind of you guys introducing yourselves.
I'm Paul. I'm a filmmaker, documentaries, and Celeste and I are co-directing a film called Poly Styrene. I'm the cliche, which is all about Poly's life, and Celeste is our guide in that film. Yeah, that's me.
Well, it's quite loud, isn't it? I'm Celeste, and I'm co-directing the film. I'm a cliche about my mother's life, and I've also co-written a book called Dayglo, which is just here. And I should say I know Steph quite well now, and we also interviewed Steph for the film and the book. So.
I was interviewed for the book, I didn't realise.
Yeah, you should.
That's hard.
I'm sure you'll find yourself in there. Yeah.
That's so exciting.
All the interviews we did for the film, some of them also made it into the book. Yeah.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So yeah, as you said, kind of you've done a lot of work over the last couple of years, kind of putting together the pieces of Poly's life. So, you know, what spurred on this moment to kind of bring everything together and archive it for this new generation?
Well, the book project was initially the book project was what I was working on first, and because I inherited a large archive of my mum's artwork and lyrics and lots of other bits, and I decided to write a book with Zoe Howe, and she's a music journalist. She wrote the Slits book. She also interviewed my mum, and so we knew each other quite well. And she introduced me to Paul because Paul had just made the film about the Sleaford mods, and was looking to make another music documentary, and he asked Zoe, for some, I'll let you finish that story.
Yeah, so I said to Zoe, if you've got any good ideas for music docs, give me a shout. She came back with 3 ideas, and clearly the best one was about Poly, because she was doing the book with Celeste. And so we met just before Christmas 2016, and the idea that we had for telling the story was for initially Celeste to write a series of letters to her mum to kind of set up a sort of a dialogue. And so in the film we use those letters, which are narrated by Celeste. We'll be using interviews with Celeste. There's also Poly's diary entries, interview entries that are narrated by Ruth Negger. Obviously there's archive footage, a lot of it unseen. So yeah, I mean it's kind of, that's how it all started to come together. And obviously, it's taken us a while. We've been doing this for like nearly 3 years, and it's one of the big challenges is getting funding for things. Because most of you know who Poly is, and you know how important she is, and how her work should be more widely known. But trying to convince funders of that, although they've all got these targets to hit, these boxes about diversity, it's another thing to actually get money out of people. And I think they also think that it's a commercial project, so they maybe don't need to fund it, but we find it quite a challenge. But we've had some good news recently, haven't we? So,
Good news?
Well,
Film on the horizon?
yeah, I mean, not enough to sort of finish the film, but just a couple of people getting involved that can take it up to the next, over the next hurdle, and help us to make a taster of footage so that we can get a bit more money and distribution deals, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I remember kind of speaking to you maybe a year or so ago, almost like maybe.
Was it the fundraiser that we did? And you played solo, didn't you?
Yeah, and even before that, I interviewed you about the archive, and kind of I was so excited that it was happening. But it is hard to kind of fund films like this, and then you see people like Iggy Pop making new punk documentaries, and there's constantly punk documentaries, but they're always about the same 3 people, maybe. So I mean, I don't know, what do you think it is that's made it hard to kind of get the funding behind this film for someone that other people, for people in this room, think is a very great iconic figure?
I think there are lots of factors. I think for us, the biggest challenge is because it is essentially a music documentary. So when you're looking, first of all, there's a lot of snobbery sort of in the funding world, this is my opinion, against me, in terms of music. Like, it's not a genre that tends to be publicly funded. Because then there'll be kind of an assumption that, oh, well, it's a music documentary, there'll be a record company, there's like money there. So if it's an underground band that, you know, X-Ray Spex, they were only together for a couple of years, there was only one album, and it wasn't like a massively selling, didn't sell like millions of copies. So that means that there's an assumption there's money there, and then when they look at it from a commercial perspective, they see, oh, actually the record sales aren't that great, so we're probably not going to make much money on this film. So it's kind of like, that is, I would say, that's the main difficulty of making a music documentary. It's either like an assumption, kind of snobbery against the genre, and then there's this assumption that there is money, and then if they look at it as from a commercial perspective, then it will be based on how much can we sell, based on how much is the music selling. So it just means if you want to make any kind of film about an underground band, it will be very challenging to raise that money based on those sort of factors. I would say that is one of the main reasons that we're finding it challenging.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. It's amazing that we've got the book though, and kind of, I mean, how have you found the reaction to kind of the news about or the book and then the archive? You had the exhibition at 198 Gallery. I don't know if anyone got to go, but Decolonise Fest was involved, and there was a whole exhibition of Poly's artwork and her writings, and kind of just showing her whole life. So how do you think the reaction has been to this kind of renewed information about Poly?
I mean, it's been really good. I think the great thing is that it's a wider project, so the film is sort of one part of a bigger thing, and because we started the film at the same time as doing the book, and the book is an art book involving a lot of original artwork, it means that all these projects were always we started everything sort of side by side. So I think it's great because it means that even if the film is taking longer, I'm still kind of working on the other bits, and it just keeps it fresh, and it keeps people, people are still talking about it and still interested, and the book's gone really well, the exhibition went really well, so I think it has been helpful for us with the film.
Yeah, I mean, more people will become more aware of your mum's work, and things like, the Afro-punk movement in the US particularly. Is it in August, the next festival? I mean, I guess Poly's always, people are always talking about her at that event, so I think it'll probably, help us out in the long run, definitely.
And so kind of, I feel at least from the book and the exhibition, I found that there was a lot that I didn't know about her life and her upbringing, and kind of those other things beyond kind of just like the Dayglo idea of Poly. I mean, what did you know about your mum's kind of other life when you were growing up? Was that kind of ever made aware to you, or was it kind of just like an outside thing that she used to do or did at the time?
You mean the music side of things? I was always quite aware because she was always doing music even when I was a kid. So she was always like writing or recording, touring. Even though she joined the Hare Krishna movement when I was a baby, and she left sort of the punk music behind, she was still kind of performing, but everything had a like Hare Krishna slant. But she never stopped performing. So I always, I grew up with my mum being a musician, and it was very much part of like my upbringing, my childhood.
Did that ever kind of rub off on you? Because I know you're a performer as well.
Yeah, it did. Although I kind of resisted actually doing music for a long time. It wasn't what I wanted to do when I was like a kid. I wanted to be a private detective, or a makeup artist.
This is new. This is the private detective thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if you ask me when I was 7 what do I want to do, it's like a private detective, of course.
That's interesting. I didn't get that. But was that kind of like as a rebellion against kind of what was technically the norm in your house?
I think when I mean, some kids want to follow in their parents' footsteps, but I just probably, when I was really small, just thought it was a bit like lame, boring. Because she would always be doing music, writing and stuff, and that would actually be taking her attention away from me. So I think I kind of resented actually maybe a bit of that artistic side of my mum, because when you're little you don't want your mum to be like a great artist, you just want them to be there for you.
Yeah, that's very true. And I guess kind of like when you found the archive and when you kind of had to go through all of that, did that kind of shed a new light on kind of what she was doing back then and how her kind of reactions kind of to different things?
Yeah, it was really, for me, amazing to see all the artwork, just because my mum wasn't sentimental as a person, so she didn't keep things. She kept very little from her music period in X-Ray Spex. She gave away like clothes, lyrics, artwork, she gave a lot away, and then it was her manager who kept, her ex-manager, who had kept sort of all this stuff. And when my mum passed away, his widow, she just gave me a box full of, suitcase actually, full of my mum's stuff. And so my mum probably wasn't aware that it was all there, and which was actually kind of, I was a bit pissed off because I was just like, you could have given this to her when she was alive. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I had all this artwork, and I hadn't seen any of it before. She had told me that she did all the artwork for the band, but just seeing it like that was such an eye-opener, and it was definitely what pushed me towards starting everything, was actually going through that and just being amazed at what she achieved.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a huge achievement in kind of terms of kind of the fact that she managed that, and also kind of at that time, I mean, what do you think has kind of kept her legacy going for so long, for kind of all these years? Because she's never really been forgotten.
I mean, a lot of it is, X-Ray Spex is one of those bands that they might not have been as big as the Sex Pistols or as the Clash, but the fans they did have were dedicated, and it was their favourite band. There's this quote that I read from the singer from Supergrass, and he was asked why Supergrass were never bigger, and he said it's because we were everybody's 6th favourite band. And it's quite true that if you might have a small audience, but if they're dedicated and they'll eulogise you, and then you can become legendary. And I think it's just occurred to me from what you said, which I sort of knew already, but Poly, people like John Lydon and Joe Strummer, they wrote songs, they were front people of their bands, but Poly did that. She was the front person, she was the singer. But she was also the Jamie Reed. She designed the artwork. She did all of those. There's no one else that comes to mind in that punk movement that did all of that I can think of really in the same way. And that's really what we'll celebrate in the film and what you celebrate in the book. That she was, not only was she a great singer, she was a great songwriter, she was a great artist. She could do it all. And I guess at the time, because of the problems that she had in her life, she didn't get to show the world on a grand scale that, but not too late now for Celeste to, and for us to do this film and show the world that.
Yeah, that's so true. I think kind of that was one of the things that struck me at the exhibition, of how kind of she seemed very dedicated to kind of controlling her own narrative and kind of creating her own story. Is it true that she kind of wanted to write a book before? So I found that quite interesting. Kind of, do you think she always believed in the importance of her work and the importance of what she was doing?
Yeah, she definitely did. She wasn't sentimental in the sense of, she wasn't nostalgic. She was always sort of looking to the future. So that's why she was resistant she resisted for years to reform X-Ray Spex and to do the, go on that kind of tour circuit again, even though there's a lot of money in it and there's a lot of, demand. She did the one gig at the Roundhouse, and that was sort of enough for her. But yes, she was very dedicated to her craft, and she was always writing and always creating. You know, she never stopped. So I think with her idea for the book was, you know, to take everything that she'd done with X-Ray Spex during that period, but then to write, she wrote these diary entries in retrospective. So it was like from looking back, but with sort of in mind, she had in mind what she was doing at that present kind of time. And she just, you know, she wasn't able to realise that because she got ill. And but I had all her diary entries, and then we were able to put them in the book, and then in the film as well. We're trying to incorporate, you know, my mum's voice into the story. It's really important.
And so I was thinking kind of so many great amazing people came from that same era as her, and kind of Joe Strimmers and Slits and all those different people. Do you think kind of Poly's legacy has been as respected, as kind of renowned as kind of those other kind of like legendary figures?
No, it hasn't. I mean, and obviously, you know, it's always the same name, isn't it? John Lydon, Joe Strummer, because they're white men, and white men, you know, tend to have the dominant narratives in any form of creative industry, really. And I think, I mean, that is the advantage to that is that those stories have been told so often, and this is a new story, and it's a story I think that you know, when you meet people doing these sort of things, and some of them go, if they got in touch and they've got stories about, you know, meeting Poly at a train station, and you know, and they don't exactly tell you what she said, but they say it changed their life, and you think, oh, you know, and I've heard a few of them, you know, so whatever your mum gave off to the world in terms of, you know, the things that she wrote about, what she represented in terms of, you know, inclusivity and all those things, people just had loads of, you know, one-to-one experiences with her, and she touched people in that way. And I don't really see, I think Joe Strummer maybe had, I don't really see that in John Lydon. I think he was become quite a complicated character, shall we say, that doesn't seem to give off much warmth. I think, you know, in Poly's music, it's a loaded term, but it's more spiritual than the kind of 3-minute, 3-chord punk music. A lot of it is pop music as well, and then some of the solo stuff is a lot more clever and, you know, folky in a way, and ambient. She was just a more all-round singer-songwriter, really, than those guys.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people didn't know where to really place her as well, and you know, so definitely she's not. Her legacy has been neglected for years. I think, yes, because she was a woman of colour. Also, it wasn't easy to really say X-Ray Spex was a purely punk band. Poly Styrene, you know, wasn't just a punk performer. She was doing all sorts of kinds of different music and playing with different genres. And then she made a very brave decision, I believe, to leave X-Ray Spex at the height of their success and do a solo sort of career with music that was so far removed from punk. It was completely a terrible, like, commercial decision, you know. She got dropped by the label, her fans hated it, and she just didn't care. She just wanted to do what she wanted to do, what she enjoyed, and what fulfilled her as an artist. So I think if you're that determined, if you're that bloody minded to do your own thing, you might not have that lasting commercial success that you can get just by sticking to a genre that sells and, you know, a style that sells and is popular.
No, that's true. And yeah, I kind of always forget, like, she made that decision herself. And I mean, she must have had to be very determined to kind of, you know, get through kind of the 70s England as it was back then, and still know exactly how she wanted to present stuff and know exactly how she wanted to be seen in that room. I mean, what made her so focused and so determined? I mean, it's very rare to have that kind of sense of self. How about you?
It's a really good question. I think that's one of our big questions that we're asking in the film as well. Is it like the environment that she grew up in? You know, how did she maintain that sort of strength of mind and confidence? despite all the challenges? It's a really good question. I don't know.
I think she was true to herself, wasn't she? I mean, you know, on German Adolescence and some of the songs that are about anti-consumerism, and her career was like that. She wasn't going to make music for, you know, consumption. She was going to make music for herself, which is what, you know, a pure artist would do. So, I mean, I don't know whether she would have, you know, through the period into the noughties, whether she was offered money to reform X-Ray Spex. I mean, right now, that whole thing of band reform became really big in the last 10 years, didn't it? And you can guarantee right now that if Poly was still alive, that there would be big offers to reform that ban. And I don't know whether she would have said yes or whether she would have said no, but she didn't seem to me like the sort of person that would make decisions purely based on, you know, as an artist just for money, because, you know, to perform and go and do that was very difficult. She found performing difficult, didn't she? As well, so.
Yeah, I mean, she walked away from a band that was really successful. X-Ray Spex, they were, you know, sort of, they had hits in the top 40. They just made a documentary about her on the BBC in 1979 that came out, who was Poly Styrene. You know, they were in all the papers. She was kind of a tabloid figure, in fact. And she literally walked away from that to do something different, knowing, you know, hearing all the kind of warnings that it was a bad idea. So I think, yeah, she clearly wasn't, you know, motivated by money or mainstream sort of pressure. She was, you know, she was truly an artist in that sense. And I think one of the things that probably made her the way she was her childhood and growing up in, you know, very difficult circumstances, and having lots of challenges from a young age meant that, you know, certain difficulties in music or in the entertainment industry, she didn't see them as big things, you know, that she could kind of get over them maybe easier than other people who maybe not had those difficulties in their childhood.
Yeah, oh, that's a good point actually, yeah, because I've been reading about her childhood and kind of like learning about in the book and kind of what she went through. And yeah, I guess kind of, I mean, I remember kind of what was striking to me is kind of in the book she kind of says that she didn't really ever like the punk scene in some ways, and there were a lot of things about it that she really disliked and kind of wanted to. Was that kind of like the reason that she wanted to walk away? Or I guess it's a wonder kind of at that time, did she ever feel like it was a home to her?
Yeah, I think punk, because I think punk, we have to kind of, you know, break it down. When we talk about punk, what are we talking about? Are we talking about, you know, a type of music? Are we talking about a lifestyle culture? Are we talking about a political kind of sort of ideology? You know, what are we talking about? At that time, punk, 70s UK punk, in many ways was quite a hostile and aggressive place to be, especially if you were a woman. The gigs, you know, to be playing these small venues with like packed out with young boys who were, you know, majority of them were between the ages of 14 and 18, who were spitting at her constantly. You know, that was the thing, you would spit at the performer. You know, everyone's like, fuck you, up yours, and you know, that was the thing. It was to be like really, you know, I'm like rough and I'm gross and I spit and I swear, and because it was a reaction at that time to be rebellious. But imagine you're just in that environment night after night after night. She definitely, it wore off the appeal very, very quickly.
Yeah, as it would do. And it's just strange that you know, when you think about that era, you just kind of I romanticize it completely, and kind of reading about what she actually thought about it. It's like, of course it would have been incredibly difficult. It would have been incredibly difficult to keep going on stage and to, you know, make it worthwhile, kind of showing your art in that space, really.
It was like she saw it as that it was like going to battle.
Yeah.
It was performing live. And then also in terms of personal boundaries, you know, she was a girl, she had a non-sexy image. That's what, you know, she made it quite clear that she wasn't, you know, didn't want to use her body, for example, to sell music. That was like one of her main things. But the more like unsexy she kind of wanted to be, the more guys would just grab her, kiss her, you know, like try and overstep those boundaries as well. And that was something, you know, that she faced sort of real sexism and also just inappropriate behaviour constantly.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I remember. I think that was in her documentary that she spoke about that. I think I remember the quote of like she said she couldn't wear Carly Simon hairdos anymore, so she couldn't have like her Jerry curl. So she decided to put like a cap on and then all of that. And I thought that was really interesting that she thought my curly hair or my blackness might be a bit awkward in this space, so let's dress it up. I mean, I don't know how much it kind of, in the book she talks about kind of being mixed raced and having a lot of problems growing up, but I don't know how much she kind of thought about it in those spaces that I assume would have been quite white. I don't know, kind of in terms of her fashion, do you think that was ever a consideration?
I don't know about the fashion. I do know that it was in terms of when she was doing the music and in terms of the media interest and journalists and interviews, they would always ask her about her heritage. And it was, you know, being mixed race. There was a lot of interest there, but I guess it was like she would start to feel that it was too much interest, and it was, you know,
Fetishization.
Exactly, definitely that's something she dealt with from a very early age. Yeah.
The thing is, like, when you're mixed race, I mean, for me, this is one of the things that initially drew me to the story was, if you're mixed race and, you know, it depends on what you are, where you live and where you grew up. But for me, my experience of being mixed race was my mum and dad was black before I can really remember, and I didn't see my Chinese Singaporean family until I was 17, and I grew up just down the road in New Cross. And my family and my mum's side were white working class, and they were lovely to me, but I knew I was different from them. And the kids I met at school that were white working class were all racist to me, and so there were no other Chinese kids in that school. And so it was really weird. I didn't really fit in with the white kids. There were no Chinese kids to kind of fit in with. And Polly's experience of coming from a working class background, and you know, we look at a bit of this in the film in terms of identity of, you know, you don't really know where you fit in. And Donlette speaks about this. Other people speak about it, and it's an experience of being, you know, mixed race that, you know, you aren't accepted necessarily by this in the 70s, obviously, or in the 60s, by the black kids as being black, and then the white kids certainly aren't going to accept you as being them. And it's the kind of, it's something that, you know, I don't know if it goes on today as much. I think we live in different time. I think we can see though that attitudes to race have kind of been improving and have now kind of begun to maybe, you know, stall again. But it's a thing that, you know, it did draw me into the story that I could relate to a lot of, you know, your mixed race as well. Is something that, you know, it's something that I didn't really accept my mixed race identity until I was probably in my sort of late teenage years, really. And, you know, it was always a struggle. And it's as much today, but I don't know, it's a strange one.
It's a big part of the story. I think there's maybe a bit of a renewed interest in the mixed race experience now. And I think for my mum, it was, yes, this feeling of, you know, not the obvious feeling of not fitting into any particular group, having a kind of lots of identity crisis throughout her childhood and teenage years, and feeling rejected by different communities, and also just she experienced some severe racist abuse. You know, she was attacked multiple times.
And that's documented in the book as
well. That kind of thing. So it was really traumatic. Her experiences with racism were so traumatic. But what was interesting recently is like I've been doing some research for archive for the film, and I came across this it was an English television program in the 59, and they were discussing racial mixing. And it was, you know, there was an old man, he would have been about in his 60s at that time, and he was, you know, obviously very much against it. And they had a mixed race family that they were interviewing, And the things that he was saying, these were things that my mum had told me that, you know, she would hear, and was that there was this idea that it was wrong, it was morally wrong for the races to mix. And that the children, and the term was miscegenation, and miscegenation in the US until I think the 60s in some states was an actual crime, it was a criminal offence. So this idea that racial mixing was so wrong, mainly because the children would be defected in some way. They would be mentally unstable, more likely to commit criminal acts, more likely to suffer from various illnesses, and all the terms that people used at the time, and in some cultures these words are still being used, half-caste, mulatto, things like that, they all refer to basically this idea that you're not a whole person, you're not a complete person, that you're in a way less of a person. And mulatto was the word that my mum used to hear a lot. Someone actually asked me the other day if I was a mulatto. I was like, that's a really insulting term. And she was like, why? I was like, because it basically means, and mulatto comes from, it's the Spanish word coming from mule. Mule is a half horse and half donkey, and mules are infertile. And so one of the reasons why mixed race people were called mulattoes, because it was this idea that you were kind of, like less, not fully human almost, it's like very, very dark. And so I think for my mum growing up in that environment and being born in the 50s, there was this idea that, you know, mixed race children were almost a danger to society, and that was like something really hard for I think anyone to deal with. But it really affected her a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think, you know, kind of there's a lot of talk about that in the book as well, and I think you interviewed Rhoda Darker, who kind of had the same experiences, and she kind of said that she just thought, if I'm not accepted here and I'm not accepted there, I'll just make my own way. And that kind of seems kind of what a lot of people did, and also almost what your mum kind of did, just thinking, this is just, I'm just going to be me, and this is it. I mean, that's fine.
I guess there's an upside to that rejection, feeling rejected, is that you just make a decision, okay, well, you know, no one really likes me, I'm not really accepted here, I'm not accepted there, I'm just going to be completely me.
Yeah, and that's true. And I feel like it's so sad to read that story in the book, but then also I hope she would have known how much she means to people now. And, you know, kind of when I was a teenager, it probably resonates with a lot of people. I remember I first found Polly, and I was just like, what is this? What is this person? And they just sounded so strange and so amazing, and it was just so amazing to find, you know, one person of colour in punk. I mean, how does it feel to kind of, you know, she is such an influence to people of colour now and to, you know, young punks today. I mean, how does it feel that she made those records and everything that she's done, and now it's kind of everyone's come out to see her?
I think it's just amazing, and I just think it's really sad that she's not alive. To enjoy like an event like this, for example, because, you know, I think what you guys are doing with Decolonise Fest, you know, it's punk, but in terms of like the environment that you're creating, it's, you know, couldn't be more different than the environment that she was sort of dealing with at that time. And I think you know, it's just such a shame that she's not here herself to be able to experience a whole new world of that. It was because it all kind of started just, you know, after she died, really. I think this sort of resurgence of punk music, but the punks of colour sort of movement, and I think it is amazing, and it's just sad for me that she can't enjoy it herself and see it herself.
I mean, it's you know what you were saying earlier about there are different types of what people define as punk, and, you know, for me it's always about the freedom of expression. You know, for other people, some people think Green Day are punk. Do you know what I mean? Like, no offense to Green Day, but to me that isn't punk. That's just like rock music. You know, and not very good rock music. But the punk for me is about freedom of expression, and, you know, this is this is a movement, and what you're doing, it's modern. Do you know what I mean? It's not, enthralled to the past in the same way that punk then became the leather jackets and the Mohicans and that kind of postcard punk stuff.
Yeah.
So this is the spirit of it, I think.
That's lovely to hear. I mean, I kind of wanted to ask, is there anything that you feel like you wish people focused more on about Poly? Like, focus more on her artwork, or anything about her life that you wish people knew more about?
I mean, the music there, and I think the writing. I mean, she not only could she write songs, which most people can't do. She could write stories. She could write fiction. She wrote short stories, and she was also an artist. I think just getting that across in the film and in the book is important.
Yeah. I think that she was a multidisciplinary artist, so that she, did all the artwork herself. It's like really important for me to stress that she, designed the clothes. She made her own clothes. She had her own shop. She started her own band. She wasn't afraid to try anything, and she just, literally she lived the DIY ethos. I think more than anyone I know, and definitely more than any of her contemporaries at the time in the music world. So I think that is the thing I would like people to maybe take some inspiration from, is that you can just, if you want to do something, if you have an inclination and you have a bit of talent, just do it, because you can. And she definitely didn't let things, she didn't, the fact that she left school at 15 with no qualifications at all. Like, she didn't do her O-levels at the time because she couldn't concentrate. She suffered from bipolar disorder, and even as a teenager at school, that sort of, I think the bipolar sort of, some of the symptoms were already started, and one of the things is that she couldn't concentrate, she couldn't sit through a class, and so she was actually kind of like a troublemaker at school. She was, kicked out. What do they call it when you're kind of not suspended? Yeah, suspended. She was suspended a lot. She was, she was always fighting, just getting into trouble. And I think her teachers would have just said, she's not going anywhere, that kind of thing. She's gonna, she's one for the dog queue. I think that's what someone said. And she ended up just, saying, well, fuck you to that whole system. I don't need that system. I don't need to succeed in that institutionalized system to succeed in life. And even though her life wasn't it was still very hard and full of challenges, she did achieve great things. That's why we're all here, we're talking about her still. And so she didn't, I think it's really important that if you feel that you can do something, but you think, I haven't got the training, or I haven't been to art school, or I haven't been to film school, or this, you shouldn't let any of that hold you back, because, you can still do whatever you want, really.
Yeah, I think it's with us, when we've been, touting the film around trying to get funding, and we've been down this arts funding route, we've been close, but what we've then come to realise is we don't need permission from the BFI or from the Arts Council or from any funder to make this film. We're going to do it anyway. We've been doing it, and we'll get there. But for a while, we've been going down these routes of effectively asking them to legitimise what we did, but Poly never did that, so why should we?
That's true. That's amazing. That's a good note to end on as well. So I think that can be the end of the written down questions, and we can go to the audience. So we have a Q&A. Does anyone have any questions they have for Paul and Celeste to start off? Or anything? Anyone any questions? We've got 15 minutes.
Well, you said you made this Decolonise documentary. Did you have the same struggles of trying to get it funded and stuff?
No, we didn't, because I didn't go to film school, and I met that band. I interviewed them for a music website, and they told me they would be doing this tour. This was back in 2014 of, as they described it, shitholes. But these were areas that have not been visited by bands on the traditional kind of route and stuff. And I thought, make a good idea for a documentary, but I'd never made a film, I'd never had really thought about that. I mean, I've got an MA in film theory, but it's obviously very different. So we crowdfunded the shooting budget, and then we just did it from the concept of my original idea. I found a co-director to make it with, to it being in cinemas was 11 months, which was pretty stupid really. We should have taken a bit longer, but I just didn't know, it should be any other way. So yeah, it happened very quickly. I mean, there wasn't really time to apply fund. It was made on a shoestring with a lot of people doing us favours. And yeah, I suppose I should take a bit more inspiration from that. It is possible to do things, as you were saying, when without going to film school, without necessarily following the traditional paths. Especially nowadays, because you can make a film on your phone, and you can even edit a film on your phone. I've not done that, but people do, and sometimes it's good work.
But you say that it's been harder to make this one, even if it's like
Yeah.
a bigger.
I mean, this one, because we need archive, and you've obviously got to pay archive fees, post-production. I mean, we did our post for the first one really cheaply. We've recorded interviews in studios, because this film has to, it's a documentary about Poly. It's Poly's legacy. It needs to, it needs to look brilliant. It needs to look amazing. And on really low budgets, you can't always do that in terms of sound and vision. So that's why we do need a bit more money.
And also, I think for Paul, probably a big challenge is probably working with me, because I mean, I'm also going to be super fussy, super like, no, it's got to be like.
That's good though. That's a challenge, but a good challenge.
I'm never going to be satisfied really, because I also think I have to think what my mum would be saying. My mum would be the most demanding person. If I've ever pissed Paul off, he just has to think of how hard it would be to work with my mum, because she would never be happy really. But that's so. Yeah, maybe we could do things a lot. Do it much cheaper, but then I want it to be really good. I want it to look really amazing as well. So that's also a big challenge for us. It's like we want to, we don't want to spend like $500,000 on this, but we also want it to be something that looks like fabulous.
That's great. And Marcus? Oh, sorry. Yeah. You can go first.
In thinking about Poly's kind of capacity to maintain this powerful sense of self, I was wondering whether she ever spoke about, alongside of the difficulties and the challenges, whether there was somebody or a group of somebody in her life, in her sort of younger years, that enabled her to kind of maintain that self-belief, whether she had the kind of balance of that.
Really good question. I mean, she obviously had her family. I mean, my grandmother, my grandmother was a single mum, brought up 3 kids by herself in a very difficult period, a very hostile environment, 3 mixed-race children. And she worked really hard, and there wasn't any money, and she was always a rock in my mum's life, definitely. I mean, I grew up, I spent half my childhood with my grandmother, so it's like both me and my mum and all the kids and cousins, we would always just, her house in Brixton was just like, it was one of these houses where it's like the whole extended family is just always there. So I do think that was a massive support. I think because my mum could always escape back to that house, and she did actually during the X-Ray Spex period when everything got too much. She left her then boyfriend's house, who was the manager in Fulham, and she went back to Brixton and could just like hide out there basically and sort of kind of get better and then face the world again. So I do think my grandmother was the biggest support for my mum. And then apart from that, I think she just took support. She took a lot of inspiration from people that she'd read about, and she had a lot of like heroes in her life. That she was sort of a bit obsessed with them, and she found a lot of kind of inspiration, like Gandhi and people like that, and Martin Luther King, and then all the artists that she would listen to, and so she was really good at sort of drawing sort of inspiration from other people, I think.
I was going to say, two things. What's sort of next? Like, what's happening next with everything? Like, at the exhibition, the book, and also in terms of funding, how can people help or offer support or things like that?
Next, what we're working on Monday to Wednesday, we're going to Bristol, me, Celeste, at the OP and a sound person, and we're going to film some footage of Celeste in a blacked out studio, with one with a black background, one with a white background, to do two types of shot. One will be Celeste talking directly to the audience. We don't have that yet. What we do have is some draft voiceovers, which are very powerful. These letters are, when you read it, when you hear it, you will get goosebumps. I mean, when I first read it, I get goosebumps now just thinking about it, because Celeste's mum was a great writer, Celeste is a great writer too. And when you read the book, you'll see that, and you'll see the film. So we're going to film some of Celeste actually talking, not all of it, but just key moments when she says certain things that will just be powerful. We're in a cinema, just seeing close up on Celeste's face, and then I'm going to interview her as well, because we haven't done that. So we've worked out some questions where we're going to go deeper into the story and ask various parts of her mum's life, some of the things that Celeste went through as well, as her mum's daughter. And that stuff will then go into what will be like a sort of taster, an extended taster, which will probably be maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20, that will then be used to try and get the last bit of funding. So I think, we might try and do more crowdfunding, I think, because everyone always asks, what can we do? And it was the people that crowdfunded it in the first place that got us that money to make it, So those people that have, generously said that we'll do some more. And the stuff that we, had through that campaign was good stuff. It was good T-shirts, it was mugs and things, and we've got some other ideas for stuff. So
yeah, I think we'll do another crowdfunder probably.
Yeah.
And the main reason is because we've been going. Our initial plan was we'll do the crowdfunder, we'd get the initial amount of money to begin making the film, and then we'd finish it with public funds, BFI funding, Arts Council funding, and that's what didn't come, was the funding from the BFI. We applied twice. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not doing any more funding applications. I'm done.
Me neither.
I'm done, and I would much rather do a crowdfunding campaign, because, in that way, it's everyone who's contributing, those are the people who want to see the film.
Yeah.
And those are the people who understand what we want to do, and they're really positive, and it's just such a different experience than going to like the Arts Council, the BFI. And so I do think I'm definitely up for another crowdfunding campaign quite soon, once we've got this sort of teaser finished. But yeah, we'll be doing that. And apart from that, the exhibition, hopefully, of my mum's artwork, I'm working with Matty Lois, who curated the show at the 198 Gallery. And we're hoping to take that to the US, because the book will be published in the US in September. And I also feel like taking the project to the US will be good for us, because there's just so much love for my mum and my mum's music in the United States, and I do feel like maybe people are a bit more positive about it in that film world. It doesn't seem as like...
They got more money over there as well.
Yeah.
This guy got in touch with us, who's now part of our team, and he's American, and he's getting involved. He's going to help us. And over here, the people in the industry, there's a lot of noise in there made about diversity, and for a lot of people, it's just a box ticking exercise. Poly was, and this is a quote from a guy who works at BFI, but is not one of the BFI guys. His name's Danny Lee, and he's a great guy. And he said Poly is she's a walking intersection of class, race, and gender. And she is, and she, those things are what these people talk about. They want to fund those things, but where's the money then?
It's true. Is there anyone else? Any other questions? Oh yeah.
Yeah, my question was basically about funding. So we're trying to put together a documentary on Decolonise Fest, and one of the sort of concerns I had was that we would have to water down the message in order to appeal to quite traditional funding boards. Do you feel like that's been the case? Have you thought about why you're not getting that funding? Is it because the subject matter's too political? Because as you say, like, she ticks all the boxes and they want to diversify what they fund. Like, what do you think is holding it back?
I think it's what Celeste said, it's snobbery around music docs. I mean, I've been to Sheffield Doc Fest 3 times, and the docs that they mainly put on are things that are sort of human interest stories. I mean, there are a few music ones, but they tend to be quite, I don't know, like, there is a snobbery around it, you know, and I don't understand why, because music is, you know, as an art form, is accepted everywhere else. You know, music is whether it's popular music that's commercial, whether it's music that's avant-garde. I mean, it's a mainstream form, but it's also, you know, something that's very left field. But in the film world, there's a bit of snobbery. But I mean, if you're going for funding, I would say what it's all about is outreach. That's what funders are interested in. Like, where is the outreach? They use that term all the fucking time, like outreach. Like, where's it going to go? Who's it going to go? Who's the audience? And it's like, you're just making a film. They want you to think about who you're going to be reaching, who you're going to connect with. So, I mean, I would say don't necessarily dilute it, but just, you know who it's for and be able to explain that. And they're very interested in, you know, representation. I think we've just been, if Polly wasn't a musician, say she'd been a poet,
Yeah.
the money would be in the bank. But I think it's this music thing, there's a real snobbery around it. It's weird.
I would also say it's funding applications are a lot about writing, actually being able to write a good application and being able to dedicate, you know, weeks and weeks of your time to just doing that and getting that really right. You know, no copy paste jobs. They won't. We did. I think we were. We did that a little bit. You have to do. You know, it's very time absorbing. It takes all your time. So you need someone who's really, really good at writing funding applications and who has lots and lots of time to spare and doesn't have a full-time job.
It's quite disheartening when you don't get the money. You just think, like, you know, I mean, I've never stopped believing in the project and never will give up. We'll get this done. We'll get it done soon. But it can be disheartening. But I think it's also a bit weird because a lot of the people that make the funding decisions, they're not filmmakers. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so why do they know more than us? You know, we're the ones doing it. I mean, like anyone that's making a film, it's like, if these people wanted to make films, they'd be going out and doing it, but they're gatekeepers, you know. And it's a bit of an odd situation. But
thanks for that. Is there any more questions? I can't see anyone. Any more? Oh yeah.
Do you think your mum would have got more recognition if Vivian Westwood wasn't about? Because you mentioned about being an artist.
If Vivian Westwood wasn't about.
She was Malcolm McLaren and stuff like that. The whole. Maybe.
Yeah, I do, because I guess when people talk about art and fashion, punk and fashion specifically, they always think Vivian Westwood, Malcolm McLaren, Sex, the shop they had on the King's Road, Sex. And yeah, my mum had a shop there as well on the King's Road at the same time. But it just, you know, it wasn't as well known and it was kind of maybe a bit overshadowed by, I mean, those two as a couple, McLaren and Westwood, are very interesting.
Yeah, I guess they kind of were the biggest around that time, so they overshadowed quite a lot of people.
And they were older than all the other, like they were more, you know, worldly, they were in their sort of mid-30s, I think, and my mum and sort of the other kind of punk kids were all like in their late teens. So they were, I think, they had a lot more of a like commercial sensibility. Definitely Malcolm McLaren was like a marketing genius, and the Sex Pistols was very much his sort of project. Whereas I think with my mum, she did have a manager, and her manager's family, they would say, oh, he moulded Poly Styrene, you know, he was the person behind it, which is like bullshit. But these kids, they were just trying to do it themselves, whereas there were other bands like the Pistols that did have like a bit of a marketing machine behind them to give them that like actual big push in terms of like the mainstream consciousness. So I do think there was that imbalance there from the start.
Yeah, that's very true. I guess we have time for one more question, if anyone has one. Oh yeah, at the back.
Probably a weird question, but what do you reckon the
state of punk? Because like punk's now manifested to something else. What do you reckon the state of punk is now?
I think, again, it's like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about punk music or punk as a culture?
As a culture.
As a culture. I think it's in a good place in terms of what you guys are doing, as I said. There are lots of positive things. And I think it's good that punk is transcending punk music. So, you know, this idea that you can be punk, you are punk because you live your life in a certain way, I think has taken over from punk. You're a punk because you wear leather jackets and you have a Mohican and you listen to punk music. So I think we have moved away from that, which is really limiting and restricting, actually. And
everyone likes leather.
Yeah. And you've moved into some kind of like punk as a lifestyle, as an attitude, and I think that is really positive. But I do think it's just, in terms of the music industry as a whole and musicians and my own experience having a band, I would say it is one of the hardest times actually to be a musician, because it's very hard to make a living out of the music, and you tend to have another job, and you know, music's your side hustle, and that can be really liberating in some ways, and you know, there's money's been taken out of the equation, but it is a real struggle, I think, for underground bands to continue doing their music and pay the bills. Like, how can you do that long term? I certainly couldn't sustain it longer than like 8 years. So that's something that, you know, I would say stands out for punk musicians as being a challenge. But I think punk as an idea is in a good place.
Okay, I think that's we're out of time now. So thanks so much for everyone to coming. Thanks to Celeste and Paul for on the panel. So we're going to have a little break now, just like a 10-minute break, but then we'll be back with a panel with Weed Rap.